All right. Good morning, everyone. I am Wesley Stefanik. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Delaware Association of Realtors. Thank you for joining us today for our June Hot Topics session. This month, we discuss downtown development districts and how, with the information you gather here today, you can help your clients and, in turn, hopefully help all of your businesses as well. A few housekeeping items before we begin. The chat box is open, so if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in there. Everybody will be muted, but you can communicate via the chat box. This session is also being recorded to reference later and will be available in our video library at delawarerealtor.com. If you don't like the way your screen looks, just hit that view button at the top right corner and you can adjust it as the presentation begins. I do want to let everyone know that our next Hot Topic session will not be until September, where we will then cover the topic of realtor safety. So with that, let's get started. Today, we are joined by Rick Farrell, who is a downtown development district coach. And before I turn it over to Rick, we have a short poll for everyone to get an idea of who is attending here today. So if you could answer this quick question, we can get started. Hopefully it popped up for everybody. Can you define a downtown development district? Go ahead and answer. I'll wait a few seconds and then I'll hit share. All right, I got a few of you. I'm going to end the poll real quick here. So Rick, good news for you. It looks like most people on the call are able to define downtown development district. So should be a little easier for you, but feel free to take it away. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, okay, my work here is done. Everybody knows about it. Let me share my screen here and start by saying that to some degree, this program has been hiding in plain view. There are folks that I run into all around the state that tell me that it's a surprise that that this is the first they're hearing of the program, and yet it's been around since 2014 when the legislature enacted this into law. It initially designated 3 communities, one from each county in the state. And then it opened up another round and a round after that. And now there are 12 such communities with this designation around the state. And what I wanted to do is just sort of stop our busy schedules. And I reached out to Wes and said, would you give me a little time to present this to your constituency, because I think it might help them in their marketing efforts as they go about their careers. And I'm surprised sometimes that how much of an effect this can have on your marketing of properties when you're aware where these districts are and what the incentives that come with the districts are as well. So I wanted to walk you through the program itself to create awareness. Hopefully that will dovetail with your own imagination and how you market the properties that you represent, and mostly figure out how to utilize this program and the other incentives that can be leveraged and stacked to support new investment in these areas. So as I said, there's 12 of these communities around the state, and initially the legislation intended to spur private reinvestment, improve commercial vitality, and build a stable community of long-term residents. You're going to see that this program applies not only to residential, but commercial and mixed-use properties. So one of the terms that I'll use today is QRPI, Qualified Real Property Investment. That basically is how much money is being invested in the property, and it's on the basis of that investment that the rebate is determined. And let me just start at the end with this. This program is designed to help spur investment. And what that means is there's a lot of people that think about making an investment in real estate, but what keeps them from doing it oftentimes is that it doesn't pencil out. There's something about the investment that makes it maybe marginal and difficult for them to enter into. So it's a non-starter to go beyond the concept and into the implementation phase on an idea. This program is sort of out there to say, hey, if you were offered up to 20 cents on the dollar for what you're about to invest, would that be enough to push you into the doing column rather than the thinking about column? And so that's what this program and what I'm talking about today is all about. This is a performance-based incentive, which means that in most cases, you have to be complete with the project in order for the rebate to kick in. I am going to tell you a little bit about an investment tool, an incentive that's been added to this program that helps you get some of the benefit of this program on the front end of the construction. We'll talk about a bridge loan in a few minutes. The program itself is available to property owners, and they can be occupants or non-occupants of the property. And it also applies to tenants. So if your buyer is intending to be a landlord, it's not often the case in a residential format. It's much more the case in a commercial building. But many of you, if your buyer is in a downtown environment, may be acquiring a building that has commercial at grade and residential above. This program applies to both of those sets of tenants if it's that kind of building format. It also applies to investors for nonprofit and for-profit developers alike, businesses, homeowners. The only people that really can't use the program are federal, state, and local agencies and quasi-governmental organizations, typically organizations that take federal money or not qualified, or state money for it because it's already coming from a pot of that state money. So they're ineligible. But everyone else on the profit and for-profit and nonprofit is eligible. So the QRPI, the Qualified Real Property Investment, must take place within the boundary of a district, and each district is allocated a certain amount of acreage, and that acreage and boundary is more specifically viewable on the Office of State Planning website. So just type in downtown development districts, Delaware, and I think the first search yields that OSPC website, and there's a drop down on that website that says interactive map, and that is a great tool for you to quickly understand if where the boundaries are in those 12 communities. There's also a map that can show you what investments have been made in those communities since the community was designated as a district. All things being equal, if your buyer is looking for something and it's in a district and they find something similar that's not in the district, it might be one of those things that makes it compelling for that buyer to choose buying within the district, because if they intend to invest some money into the redevelopment of that property, they're going to get a benefit that doesn't happen when you're outside that boundary. Also, every district has a district plan, and the things that they do, the redevelopment must be in compliance or in conformance with that plan. But that's very broad and handles a lot of things that would be improvements to the property are, in my experience, always approved, and everybody on each side of the transaction is happy with the results. One of the things that has to happen is that your real property investment has to be made when the designation applies. If you make an improvement before the designation applies, so there are open rounds in the future that if you had a client that was buying in an area that became, subsequent to that purchase, a DDD, only the investments after it was designated would be eligible for the program. So there's basically two flavors of programs in big picture terms. There's large projects and small projects. The large projects typically are commercial or mixed use in nature, but they don't need to be. It really is a function of a financial threshold for the investment. So large projects are anything greater than $350,000. And when you have such a project, the rebate is calculated for up to 20% of the QRPI, the Qualified Real Property Investment. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about exactly what qualifies as real property investment in a moment. But that 20% applies in large projects up to 2.5 million. And after the project has a value of 2.5 million or higher, there's a different way of calculating the rebate. Basically, it works out to $60,000 per 1 million comes back to the investor, and that's capped at $2 million. So a $27.5 million investment in a project would yield a $2 million rebate in such a large project. Then there's small projects, and I suspect that for a lot of our residential realtors, particularly, this is where you'd find the most activity. Again, that could be in those commercial at grade and residential above configurations, or it can be straight out residential home, townhome, or freestanding home alike. That's when the real property investment is somewhere between $25,000 and $350,000. This project is not including the acquisition cost. This is once your client, the buyer, acquires the property. If they're going to make an investment between $25,000 and $350,000, there would be a rebate calculated on the basis of those expenses, and there's a maximum opportunity to get $70,000 for a $350,000 project. So when you're applying for a large project, you need to get a reservation, which means that typically there are spring and fall openings for this type of investment, and the applicant tells DSHA, that's the Delaware State Housing Authority, who oversees and administers the program. You tell DSHA that you're interested in filing for a large project. You go through the steps that present the scope of the project and what the total cost of the project is likely to be. And when you get your reservation, essentially the state is earmarking funds for that project when you complete the project. Large projects can be competitive, which means that sometimes there can be more people applying for a project than there's funding for the project. That typically is dealt with by the state has an allocation for each of the communities that's a designee. And when there are more applicants for the funding set aside in that particular locale, they will sweep the funds from other parts of the state that aren't being utilized. And through the history of the program, projects just get funded. So it can be competitive for large